Hello everybody, welcome to this wonderful tarot card reading. I'm Zoe Alex, welcome. In this wonderful reading, I'm going to make you all laugh. Now, the point being is that this is going to be a comedy, funny reading because it will make you all laugh if you like it to laugh or not. But this is how it seems to be, and this is the way of how it goes. So, there are two different ways about how I can put this together in a whole entire puzzle. Basically what it means is that this is going to be a very comedy special of how it is, because that this is the way of how it is. This is the way it seems to be in that way, because we need to understand about how it's going to go. But the way of how this is, while everything is all shuffled and everything else, this is the way it's going to be in that way. Basically that this is going to be a very good pressuring point about what's going on in that way, and you think that okay, everything seems to be fine and dandy. But this is the way it goes. This is like how it is in one way or another. So you need to understand that when you have your own basically comedy, and you're making all my fans laugh and everything else, it because it gives me an opportunity to do that, right? So you need to understand about how it is. So it's very how it is, and it's the way it goes, right? So going to understand about what's happening in the way of how it is, and this is the way it goes in one way or another. So you need to understand what's going on in this way of knowing what's going on in this whole entire theory, and you have to based on what's going on in this way. So you have to understand that this is a wonderful comedy special of this whole entire reading that we're going to do, because it might make you laugh, it might make you cry, it might make you angry, it might make you all whatever it is. But it's basically humor, right? So when we understand about what humor is, it's basically entitles me to do that, because this is the way it seems to be, right? So you have to have your own way of knowing that laughter is the best medicine, right? It is, right? So that's how it is, right? So this is the way it goes. But I'm going to read you an oracle card. It says blame. I accept responsibility for my well-being. So this is the way it goes, where you have a blame, right? When you blame, it basically puts on to that other section of how it seems to be, where you're blaming on that piece. You're blaming about, oh, it's not my fault, it's yours, or I don't know what to do, because that's the way it goes, right? So you're blaming about a way of a behavior, and you're thinking, well, this is not good. But in that format, in this whole entire special occasion, this is the way it goes, where you have blame, right? So when you have blame, it's like you don't know what to do, but you need to understand about what's going on in that situation, whether you like it or not. But this is the way it goes in that way, right? This is the way it seems to be. But less is more, where you pay attention about when you have blame, you pay attention to what's going on in that way, right? That's how it is. So I'm going to look at what's going on between the past, the present, and the future in one way or another. But this is very comedy like. It's the way it seems to be in one way or another. And you think that, oh well, this is gonna be how it is, because this is the way it seems to be in that way. And you think, oh well, this is gonna be very understanding about how it is. And it's the way it seems to be in that way, right? So you have to understand how you're going through in one way or another, and you think that, well, this is going to be very interesting of how it is, because that's the way it kind of goes. So here we go. So basically, in this whole entire reading that I'm going to tell you all, is that this is the way it goes, this is the way how it looks. So you have two wands reversed, you're not planning on something. Nine of Pentacles is upright, your trust. Okay, that's the way it goes. The Ace Wands reverse and the Two of Pentacles reverse. You're not balancing two things at once. There's no new beginnings yet. Nothing. The Six of Wands is upright, where you have celebration on your side. All right, but then the Seven of Cups is upright, where you're having a delusion. Right. It's basically feeling like you're having a basically you're having a illusion or a deja vu moment or whatever it is. So you're thinking, well, this is going to be very interesting, but then it's like, well, I don't know what to do. But this is just a funny funny way of how I can try to express this to you all, whether you like it and whether you understand this. So I'm going to look at from the past, then the present and the future. So this is the way it kind of looks. I'm going to do like a 3-card reading, but it's just going to be like very it's a funny way of how it is, whether you like it or not. But let's continue, shall we? So let's start with the 2 of Wands. The King of Swords is upright, followed with the Ace of Wands is upright. So it does represent where you're going to have a new beginning and you have knowledge. So where you have knowledge, you have that, you have the way of how it goes. You're having a peace offering, or whatever it seems to be. Because the Ace of Wands represents your new beginnings, because you're going through something. That's how it is. That's how you're going to provide what you're looking for, because it's based on that. It's based on how you can do that in that circumstance, and you're thinking, well, this is the way it goes, this is the way it looks like, because that's how it seems to be. So you could be dealing with another Leo, Aries, Sagittarius. You could deal with another Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, as air signs, zodiac signs, and fire signs as zodiac signs as well. That's how it seems to be. What's happening with this 9 of Pentacles here? Ace of Cups reversed, the 6 of Cups reversed. So that means that you're not looking for love, and you're not looking at the past. That's the way it goes. So there is no past to this situation. I'm going to clarify between the Ace of Cups and the 6 of Cups. The 9 of Cups is upright, because you're having fulfillment. You're having the way of saying, okay, well, this is the way it happens. This is the way of how I can lose my own control, or the ability of how it is, right? So you need to understand that the way of how this is, you're thinking, well, this is an opportunity to understand that. This is the way of how it is. This is the way it kind of goes in that way, right? So you have to understand that of how it is. So what's happening between the two pentacles here in the present? So the High Priestess reversed, the 2 of Cups reversed, the 10 of Wands reversed, but the Strength card is upright. So there is no relationships or friendships, but the Strength card represents Leo as a fire sign. So you're having that bravery, you're having the ability that you're going to talk, and you have to portrait of how you're feeling that way, and you're thinking, okay, well, I know what to do, I got this, I know how I can proceed with caution. That's the way it goes, right? So you're trying to figure out what's happening in that circumstance, and you're thinking, well, this is going to be very interesting. That's how it's going to be played out. What's happening with this Ace of Wands here? The 2 of Pentacles is upright, followed the 2 of Wands is upright, followed by the Page of Cups is upright. So it does represent where you're balancing, 2 things at once. That's what you're doing. The 2 of Wands is upright where you're planning on something. That's the way it goes. And then the Page of Cups is upright because you want loyalty, right? You want to be loyal. You want to be whatever you want. That's the way it goes. And you're thinking, well, doesn't make any sense. It does make sense because that's the way it goes. It's not nonsense. It's not whatever it is. But the way of how you can proceed with ability, you understand what's happening in that circumstance, right? You're thinking, well, this is going to be very interesting, or how I can apply it in one way or another, right? That's the way it seems to be in that way. What's happening with this 7 of Cups here? The Emperor is reversed, followed by the 6 of Wands is upright, followed by the Death card reversed, followed by the 7 of Cups is upright. So it does represent where you're having a delusion, because another deja vu moment. You are celebration, because that's the way it goes, because you're thinking, well, this is going to be very interesting. That's the way it seems to be. So you need to understand about how you can do it, how you can understand how you're feeling, and that's the way it goes, right? Because you're trying to be perfectly clear and saying, well, this is the way it goes. I got this. Yeah, but what's the point, right? That's the way it goes. What's happening with this 6 of Wands here? The 9 of Pentacles is upright, followed by the 6 of Swords reversed, followed by the Fool is upright. So you want change, you want to have trust. That's the way it goes. There's no movement here, nothing. What's the 6 of Swords about? The Magician reversed, followed by the 6 of Pentacles reversed. So you're not having any kindness. No, you're not. But then the Queen of Pentacles is upright because you want stability. Because in that in that way you're trying to figure out where everything has to be all concluded, everything has to be all satisfied and everything else. So you can see how this is very interesting, right? Is this the way of how it goes, right? So in the way of this is the way of how this is going to be in this way, you need to figure out, well, this is going to be an opportunity to understand this is the way of how I can proceed the ability from the right and wrong perspective. You know, so you need to understand about what's going on in that situation, whether you like it or not, whether you pay attention on how you can proceed with caution or whatever it is, right? This is the way it seems to be in that way where you need to figure out what's going on, right? Because you need to believe that you can do it, right? It's the way of how it is, right? You need to go with the flow, you know. That's how it kind of is because that's the way it seems to be. So you need to understand what's going on. So, you know, it's the way it kind of concludes. That's how it is. So I'm gonna go from the past situation. This is all the past. This is the present. This is the future. Okay, but it seems to be funny. You know that. So what's happening in the past between the King of Swords and the Ace of Wands? The Ace of Cups is upright, followed by the Fool is upright. Yeah, see, there's gonna be change, right? There's gonna be change. There's gonna be romance. You know, that's the way it kind of is, because this is the way of how it's gonna be affecting in one or another. You're thinking, oh well, this is gonna be very interesting. It is, because that's how it seems to be in that moment. What's happening between this Nine of Cups here? The Three of Pentacles reversed, followed by the Queen of Cups reversed. Yeah, so there's no empathy, there's no excitement. Opposite, Four of Pentacles reversed, Nine of Pentacles reversed. So you're not feeling any comfortable. No, because you're feeling uncomfortable. That's the way it kind of looks in that way. So you're thinking, well, this is not going to end well. It's not, because things are not going as planned. Things are not going the beyond and above situation. It's not. But this is the way it goes, right? This is the way it seems to be. So you're thinking, well, this is the way of how it is. What's happening with this brave card in the present situation? The Seven of Pentacles is upright, followed with the Seven of Wands reversed, followed with the Six of Pentacles is upright. Yeah, see, you want to act like you're going to have kindness. You know, that's the way it goes. Seven of Pentacles represents that you're focusing on your career. Yes, you are focusing. But then when you focus about having kindness, you want things to happen in one way or another. You're trying to shape your own way of how you're experiencing, well, you're acting loyal, you're acting about how it is, because that's what it is, right? You're thinking, well, you know, this is the way it goes. This is the way it happens, right? And you're trying to understand how you can be looking at it from a different perspective or a different picture, whatever it is, right? What's happening between this Page of Cups and the Two of Wands here? The Empress is upright, followed by the King of Swords reversed, followed by the Knight of Swords reversed, followed by the Ace of Pentacles is upright. Yeah, because you want prosperity, you want nourishment, because that's the way it kind of goes, right? This is the way it seems to be in this, you know, how it is. This is not a never-ending story. This is not the way of how it goes. This is the way it seems to be, where you need to understand of how things are in that ability. So we understand about what's going on from the past situation. We're knowing what's going on from the present situation of, you know, here now, whatever it is, and then what's happening in the future. So let me clarify the Seven of Cups and the Six of Wands here. The Five of Swords is upright, yeah, because you're having conflict. Yeah, that's the way it goes. When you're having conflict, when you're not participating, that's the way it goes, right? You're thinking, well, this is not going to end well. It's not. Because unnecessary, this is the way it seems to be in that way. What's happening between this Queen of Pentacles and this Fool card? The Eight of Cups is upright, yeah, because you want to have the experience of knowing what's happening in that way, right? You're thinking about what's going on in that way. So, you know, this is why this is going to be very comedy, because, you know, let me try to tell you something. So, as you can see, that in the way of how I'm going to describe this, there was a time where, you know, basically, when I look at this word blame, it means that you're blaming about someone in your own commitment relationship, or whether you're blaming about that, right? Now, you are using the word blame. Okay, now let's say, for example, you're actually, blaming about the person that makes you all angry, frustrated, pisses you off, everything else, repeats things, right? And you're thinking, well, this is not going to end well. It's not, because you're trying to focus about what's happening. You're trying to be kind, you're trying to be loyal, you're trying to be whatever. But when you have the ability of having conflict, when you're having, entertainment, when you're feeling uncomfortable, and you want to really to change, it's really how it is, right? Because when things not go right, go left. That's the way it goes. you know, that's how it seems to be, right? Because in that note, in that facility of how it is, you need to pay attention on what's going on, because there is a way, there is a knowing about what's going on in that continuation. Everything is continuing, right? Excuse me. When you focus on abilities from the right and wrong perspective, you have to pay attention on how it is. You have to go with the flow. You have to do what you can to emphasize of how you're feeling, how you're being wanted, how you're feeling, and that's how it is. But this whole entire fiasco of this whole entire example that I'm telling you about, if you're using the word blame and you're blaming about that person, whether you're not getting along, you're not feeling okay, you're feeling like I'm fine, but it's like, no, you're not feeling fine. You're not, because you want to have your own special attention. You want to feel like, oh, woe is me, I'm so low, I can't do this anymore. That's the way it goes. But in theory, that you need to understand that when you focus about not having blame, or you're not going to play the blame game, it basically tells the other person that's saying, well, this is my uncontrolled business. Um, I'm not feeling comfortable, or I'm not feeling confident, or whatever it is, because when you are basically blaming that, whether if you're blaming about your own, energies, whether you are being positive or negative, or being negative, or acting like you're sassy, or whatever you is, it's basically you need to figure out about what's happening in that way, right? If you're acting sassy and you're acting like that, and you're just roll your eyes, it means that you're trying to not focus on that. You need to focus about what's happening in that situation, whether you like it or not, whether you think that, why is your partner being like a mess, or why are you fighting like cats and dogs? You know what I mean? But you know what I mean, right? It's basically where you need to figure out what's happening in this situation, right? If you like it or not, or whether you pay attention. You have to understand that there is a life cycle, right? Where we're going through a lot of things, right? Whether you're feeling happy, whether you're feeling angry, whether you're feeling sad, whether you're feeling anxious, whether you're worried about something. Because you need to figure out that you have to focus on how you're feeling, how you're feeling wanted, how you're feeling needed, how you're feeling everything, because that's how it seems to be. You need to figure out that, oh, well, this is going to be interesting, I need to do this. Yes, but you have to have your own responsibilities, whether you like it or not, whether you have your sensitivity, right? You have to pay attention on what your partner is feeling, whether you like it or not, whether you decide that, okay, well, I'll pay attention to him, I'll listen to him more, or whatever it is, right? It's like vice versa. It's like, oh, well, I'll listen to her, or she's going to listen to me. It doesn't really matter that way, right? When you focus about the word called blame, like you're blaming about you're hurting that person, whether you're hurting about that person with negative words, or you acting like you're acting out, and you're saying, well, I'm not going to participate with you, I'm going to have a bad day, or you're making it worse, or you're continuing about repeating yourself, or whatever it is. That's what acting out is. when you're acting sassy, you're acting sassy, right? It means that you're trying to not be crucial about your partner. You're trying to get along. You're trying to pay attention. You're trying to do all these things. But when you have the word called blame, it doesn't fit, right? It doesn't fit the criteria of how it is, right? When you focus on blame, you're focusing on that. You're focusing, well, this is not going to end well because you're focusing on the word blame, right? And that's how it is. So whether you're trying to have a conversation and you're trying to have kind words and stuff, and you're saying, oh, whatever, you're gonna cause it or whatever it is, and you're blaming that person, and you're blaming that someone or that individual or whoever else, you're thinking, well, this is not going to end well. It's not. Because you need to focus on what you're doing. You focus on never forgive or forget. You pay attention, right? But when you're acting, so how you can feel that you're feeling like unwanted, unneeded, or unwelcomed, or uncomfortable, or whatever it is. Why are you choosing the word blame? Write in the comments below in the description box if you want. But you know what I mean, right? When you use the word blame, it kind of doesn't fit the criteria, right? It's the word of how it is, where you need change, where you're going to be acting like you're all kind and in all this, and then you're not acting like you're kind. You're acting like you're being unkind, or you're being bossy, or you're acting like you are being like childish, whatever it is. It basically tells the other person that you're pissing that person off, right? You're making that person mad because you can't control your feelings. You can't control your emotions. You can't control what if you want, right? If you get mad at the smallest details, at the smallest, why? Why are you keep doing that? Why? Right? That's what it seems to be. Because whether if you are in a long-term relationship or a short-term relationship, it doesn't really matter what the person says or does, If you are expecting that all you want is loyalty, respect, honesty, being genuine, being kind, that's all fine business. But whenever you turn it the other way around, okay, and you're focusing on another person, and you're thinking, well, this is not going to end well because that person is not paying attention to you, not misunderstood, miscommunicating, misunderstanding. There are things that you're trying to participate. You're trying to think, forget this, I'm going to leave, I'm not going to be in a long-term relationship. No, the point being is that it's like you're focusing about what was happening. You're focusing that, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to wake you, or go back to sleep, whatever it is. Like, but you know what I mean, right? It's basically you're trying to understand what the person wants, what the person needs, what the person values. You have to be, basically you're trying to pay attention on how you can do it. If you're blaming the person and you're blaming about that individual and you're thinking, well, I would like to play the blame game. Well, you're blaming that, right? Because you're saying, well, I'm not going to blame this. I'm not going to blame myself because I'm, a, highlighted, royalty, individual. Because you're feeling like that, right? You're trying to be respectful. You're trying to get what you want, right? And whenever you want to do something and you want to say, well, I like this individual, he likes me, whatever it is, I want to be into him, I'm in love with him, I'm so, clinging to him and everything else, then why would you try to pick on that person and trying to say, well, I'm not going to get the magic touch from you. But you know what I mean, right? You have to pay attention what your partner is. You pay attention to it. Because you know why? You have to remember that, This is why I'm going to make all you laugh, okay? Because I'm going to say is like, you can't fix stupid. And that means that you can't. No, you can't. But you know what I mean, right? Because I'm going to say this, and once for all, I'll say it every single, in my whole entire videos, okay? I say this. I said, there is always a silver lining with every relationship, between how hard it is, how easy it is, whatever it is, right? You're looking at what's going on in that situation. You're trying to figure out what's going on with your partner, If your partner is feeling stressed out, if your partner is feeling angry or mad or miserable or whatever it is, and your partner needs you, then you pay attention, right? If you're focusing about the word blame, it's going to get harder as it looks, right? Every relationship is different, whether you like it or not, right? That's why it seems to be that you need to pay attention whether you decide or whether or not decide, right? If you're saying to your partner, okay, well, I'm going to, not going to, do my morning messages to you, it means that you're saying them the wrong message. You're telling them like a big, bold lie, That actually gives you a red flag in every long-term relationship, That's what it means. That's why it seems to be where either you are role-playing and you're thinking, okay, well, I'm going to be the bigger picture or the bigger man, and I'll do whatever I want, Or let's say the individual is a woman and she's saying, I'm going to be the bigger picture, bigger woman. I'm going to do whatever I want, because you're acting like that. You're acting like you want to be the boss of the long-term relationship. But does it make sense? Does it make, how you can see it as a diversion, right? You're trying to figure out whether you like it or not. That's how it is. But this is the way it seems to be. So you've seen all the cards right now. I'll add more to it. But then you will see how you're going to see everything, because it does, right? And this is a whole entire funny video, right? It is funny, because this is the way it seems to be. You need to understand about how funny this is, how you're going to make your other person laugh, whatever it is, whether who you're watching with, but basically it makes you laugh, right? Laughter is the best medicine, I always say, right? That's why it is, because you pay attention, right? So I'm going to use the cat tarot and the other tarot as well. So I'm going to use this kind of tarot, but first I'll do the cat tarot first. So I'm going to use this. Now I already showed you about the past. The past is on the left side. The middle is the present, and the future is on the right side, right? So let me try to clarify on the left side. So you have the High Priestess upright, the Emperor was reversed, the Fool reversed, Wheel of Fortune reversed. So it means that when I look at it, the High Priestess is upright and the Wheel of Fortune, you're having bad luck, right? You're using your High Priestess means that you're using your inner voice, right? You're being quiet. You're being who you're feeling with, because when you're having bad luck, things are not going as planned, because you're trying to be the bigger individual rather than your other partner that wants to be the bigger individual. But it doesn't make any sense, right? That's why it feels like it's nonsense, right? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. Because you can't fix stupid. But that's how it seems to be. That's focusing on the Nine of Pentacles reversed. So Empress reversed, but the Devil is upright. So it means that when you have the Devil that's upright, you're feeling obsession. You want to have violence. You want to get crazy. You want to get very how you can be feeling like, oh well, this is not going to end well, because it's not. You're focusing on negativity. You're focusing about pushing your partner away from you, and you're thinking, well, this is not and you're thinking, well, I don't know what to do, right? That's why when you put this together as violence, or whether you're feeling obsessed or you're pushing that individual away, it makes you want to think, well, this is not going to end well for me. And that's how it is, because you're focusing on that. You're focusing that if I keep pushing and pushing and pushing, maybe that individual will leave the long-term relationship. Now, that is a big bold lie. Do you see that? Yeah, you do, right? That's how it seems to be. Because I'm not basically, saying that it is true, but it is true, by the way. You pay attention to it. You focus on that. Let's continue. So let's focus on the middle, as in the present situation, as now. So the Magician is upright, but the Moon is upright. So there are misrotations here, and the Magician, you have skill, right? So when you have skill, you have your own priorities set. You have things to be motivated. You need to pay attention on how you can do it. All right, but that's how it seems to be. Now, that's how you're going to do that. Now, what's happening between the Ace of Pentacles here? The Fool reversed, but with the Strength card is upright. Yeah, because you want strength, because that's the way it goes. You're being brave, right? When you're focusing on the Fool reverse, there is no change. Nothing about that. But you're focusing on what's going on in that situation. You're focusing, well, I can't do this anymore, I quit, right? Because you're focused on that. But when you focus about when you're having strength, you're having bravery, because you're being brave, right? If the individual is telling you what to do, or command you about doing something and you don't want to do it because you're feeling like you're uncomfortable, that's what it seems to be, right? That's why when you focus on the individual, whether it's a woman or a man or whatever it is, you pay attention. Because you can't say that, oh, I'm going to blame you, because you can't, and you never. You pay attention about what's going on in that situation, whether you like it or not. You have to focus on yourself. You're focusing on what's going on behind that picture, behind what's going on, because you see it. You have to pay attention whether you like it or not, whether you feel like, should I talk to him or should I just ignore him all day? See, there are two things you must learn first. In order to decide about should I talk to him, you go and talk to him. But if you ignore him all day or whatever else without speaking to him, that's rude. That's mean. You pay attention about that. If you are in a long-term relationship, you understand what's going on. If you're in a short-term relationship, it's not going to work out. This is not sugar and sweet. This is not your cup of coffee or a cup of tea, whatever it is. It's not. You pay attention to what's going on in that moment of time, right? That's the way it goes. What's happening on the Five of Swords of the future situation? So the Justice reversed, but with the Judgment is upright. Yeah, because you're taking action. But when you have the Justice reversed, it means that you're telling a lie, because you're not telling the truth. You're not, because you're focusing on what's happening around that situation. You're focusing on yourself, not your partner, yourself, because you're focusing, well, this is not going to do anything. I'm just going to go and leave, because you can't handle it. If the individual who's a woman, who's speaking you to be unkindly, do whatever she says, it's basically pathetic. She wants to expect things from you, but then she gets all angry, all upset, and she gets all angry, and then she does that. because she's putting pity on you. Pity. Because she doesn't want to blame it, but she does. And she won't say it, but she says it in her mind. See, that's what I know, and that's how I understand that there's body language, right? When you participate in your own social life, as in, communication and everything else, you see the words typing, 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 and you're typing all the words that you can say until the individual who's the woman talking to the guy and say, well, if you can't do this, I'm not going to give you this. Now, that's a bull lie too. See, the point being is that about this whole entire reading, whether you like it or not, you pay attention to it. You pay attention if you're focusing on being who you are, where you're saying, all right, I'm happy, yes, I can do it. But then it's like, no, I'm going to leave now. Toodles. Like, no. You know what I mean? No. You're focusing about that. You're focusing on what's going on in that situation. Whether you have your own control, your own ability, your own, be observant. You're observing what's happening. Because you have to say it. You have to do exactly what you're told to do. Be responsible. Be how you're feeling. Be how you can be courageous. Do what you can. But if a woman says to that individual, who's a man, would they get along? Or would they not gonna get along? That's how it is. You pay attention on what's going on in that situation. You're focusing on what you're going to get or not. You forgive and then you're going to forget. That's the way it goes. It's a long-term relationship. It's hard. It's really hard. Because the individual who is a woman tries to not get angry at the man. Tries to not tell the man what to do. Or acts sassy. Or acts like, oh, well, he's not talking to me. I'm not going to talk to him for the rest of the whole entire day. See, that's actually rude. It's frightening. Like, you pay attention. You pay attention on how I'm feeling. This whole entire reading I'm telling you about. You pay attention on how it's going to be affecting you. If you're in a long-term relationship or a short-term relationship, it doesn't matter. But you're focusing on what? You're focusing on how you're going to get this. Because it's like this is how it is. It's like, sorry sweetheart, I can't do this today. I quit. But you know what I mean, right? That's what it seems to be, right? Because in the way of how this is, it's the way of how this is, right? You need to focus on that. Let me focus on the Eight of Cups, shall we? So the Chariot is upright, followed by the Temperance is upright. Yeah, because you're healing, right? When you're focused about having healing, and when you're focusing about having progress, there are two different things. Progress is like you're making progress. You're making progress, everything's fine, in a long-term relationship. Alright. But when you have temperance, you're healing on what the individual was saying to you. If the individual who is a woman is saying to a man, saying, you caused it, she's blaming that on you. She won't admit it, but that's the one way. Right? Because you can't be mean or rude in a long relationship. You can if you want, because you're acting all girly, you're acting all sassy, you're acting like, how it is. Because you're focusing on that. You're focusing that, oh, well, woe is me, I can't do this anymore. I want to go after whatever. That's what it is. You can't admit it. No, you can't. But why? That's the question. Why? But it comes below if you want. But you know what I mean. Because if it affects you, it affects the other individual. That's what it is. Right? And that's why you see me a little bit pissed off in this whole entire video. I'm sorry. But that's what it remains, right? Because you have to focus on that. Now I'm going to do what the universe is saying in these cards here. Then I'll do the oracle cards after that. Then enchantment at the end of this reading. Sorry about this reading that it takes so long, but it is. I'm sorry. But you know what I mean, right? So I'm going to do one. I'll do between the past situation, and then I'll do the present, and I'll do the future in this whole entire long-term / short-term relationship between these two individuals. I might be talking to a Scorpio, I might talk with Sagittarius, it doesn't really matter. But that's what it seems to be, right? So it does focus on the ability, because you're trying to understand about how you can, remain of how you're feeling, right? Because you're focusing, right? And you're focusing about how it's going to be affecting you, but it does affect about what's going on in this whole entire way of how it is, right? Because that's the way it seems to be. So I'm going to do the past first. You won't see the cards, but eventually, at the end of the video, close to the end of the video, you will see what I'm talking about. You can just focus on how I'm feeling, because you can understand why I'm a little bit pissed off. Not at you, not all of you, but you know what I mean. So let me go and focus on in the past. So I'm going to do one card for the past, one card in the middle of the present, and what's happening in the future. Alright, so the Page of Swords reversed, there is education. So when it's reversed, you have no education, but you're being educated at the same time. So let me focus on this. The Hangman is upright, followed by the King of Pentacles is upright. Yeah, so you want security, and you have restrictions, right? So you have restrictions because you want to talk to the individual as a woman, right? She's trying to have that ability, that she wants to have security, she wants to have restrictions because she's being restricted. Yes, it's basically wrong for that individual as a man who keeps waiting and waiting and waiting, because that's how it is. The man is waiting for the individual as a woman to come back and contact him. But then she realizes what was going on because she's focusing on what was happening, right? She doesn't want to blame. She doesn't want to do that. But she's focusing on that. She's focusing about what was going on around the situation, whether she likes it, whether she doesn't. She's acting all, where she's doing that. She's trying to be impressive. She tries to make the individual in humility, guilty, shame, dishonesty. She's trying to be with him as much as she can. But when she focuses that, oh, you're not paying attention to me, or whatever, it means that she's trying to focus on something else. Because that's how it is, right? You need to focus on what was going on in that situation. You're focusing on what's happening in that way. This is the way it goes, right? What's happening between the past of the Eight of Pentacles reversed, because there's no perfection. So what's going on here? The Page of Cups reversed. Yeah, the High Priestess upright. So when you're using the High Priestess upright, you're using your inner voice, because you want to have a good voice as you calm down, as you're doing whatever you want. That's the way it goes. But the Page of Cups reversed, now this is very interesting. Page of Cups reversed means that there's no loyalty. No, because the woman who is an individual, she's acting like, okay, well, I'm not going to be loyal right now, because she's focusing on what was happening. She's focusing about, where things are not going her way, things are not going as planned, things are not, whatever she is, She's focusing on what's going on, because that's the way it goes. Because she's trying to be insincere. She wants to be, how she's going to be insecurity, or the way of how she's feeling uncomfortable, whatever it is. She's trying to act all nice. She's trying to act all, all generous and genuine and everything else. Because she's trying to focus on herself. She's not focused on the individual, who's the man. She's not focusing. No. Because, believe me, it doesn't work out that way, sweetheart. But you know what I mean, right? You pay attention on what's going to happen. You pay attention what bring you in this situation. You have to focus on that. Because when you focus about the word called blame, or you're focusing about that, and you don't want to focus about playing the game called the blame game, like you don't want to. But you focus on that. You focus about what was going on in that situation. You have to understand about that. If you're getting all mad, if you're getting all how it is, feeling anxious, feeling worried, feeling whatever you're caused with, why are you saying to that individual as the man, and she's saying it to you, you caused it? That's basically a bold lie there, right? It is. Because when you say that to an individual, to a man, you're focusing. You're focusing about what was going on, but it's hurting you. You're focusing about what was happening in that situation. You pay attention on how you're feeling. Pay attention about what was going on in that situation. Pay attention about how you can evaluate your own strengths, your own weaknesses. That's the way it is, right? That's how it is. Because when you're using your inner voice, you're focusing on that, right? Now that was in the present. What's in the future? So the Lovers is upright, but I'm going to clarify that. The Six Wands is upright. There's achievement. Queen Wands is upright. There's charisma. Yeah, that's the way it goes. And the Knight of Pentacles here is there's no trust. Yeah, because the individual who would be the man or the woman, it doesn't matter. The word is basically, when you look at this word, it says that basically it means that when it's reversed, it means that you have no trust. It means that basically when you have no trust, you're not trusting. You're not trusting your gut. You're not trusting about how you're feeling wanted, how you're feeling needed, how you're feeling all needy. Because you're focusing on what happened, what hurt you, what hurt the individual as the man or the woman. Because you need to focus on that, right? So let's so you guys can see what I'm talking about with all this information. See? That's how it is. That's how it remains. Because when you look at this, you're thinking, wow. Right? That's how it kind of is at the moment. So let's see who's the individual here. So let's see. Alright, so we have the Page of Water is intuitive, sensitive, artistic, friendly. A new person enters your life. Relationship begins a new phase. Heightened psychic abilities. Yeah, because, the individual could be Scorpio as the man, and he wants to have the abilities from the right and wrong perspective, because he understands that he wants to be friendly, he wants to be genuine, he wants to do that. And he knows something that was happening. He knows that there was something's up, That's why he has the ability from knowing what his gut is feeling, like his stomach, feeling. That's the way it goes. Right? What's happening in the middle? The Wheel of Fortune, Archangel Michael. A time of positive change. A situation suddenly moves forward. Fortune is on your side. Yeah, because you're having good luck on your side. Because you're focusing on that. You're focusing what's going on in that situation, and you're focusing about how you can do it in one way or another. That's the way it goes. Because you're focusing on that. And what's happening on the right side? The Three of Water. A celebration, a wedding, graduation, or birth announcement. The need to have more fun. Yeah, because he could be focusing that he's acting like he could be being sassy, or he's just in the wrong or in the right perspective, and he's trying to focus about what is going on. So he understands about how he can do it, how he can focus on how the individual was happening because of what was happening in that way, because that's what it seems to be, right? So it does make sense, right? Because there is water here, right? There's water here, So you're focusing about what was happening in that way. Let's see about more oracle cards that I'm going to do. So let's see what's happening on the left side. The High Lady of Love and Compassion. Reverence, kindness, consideration. Yeah, so she was trying to have kindness, but she was being having her own consideration. Whether she was trying to figure out, well, I'm going to do this, but she has to focus on what was happening in that way, and she was trying to not making any trouble for him. She was trying to focus on what was happening, right? She was trying to figure out that there was something that was happening, and she didn't like it at all, but she was trying to be generous, but it doesn't work out that way. It doesn't. What's happening in the middle? The Spiral Dancer. Circulus, root, perception. Yeah, so this could be a tenuous circulus, like a continuous cycle. Because the way of how this is, it's a back and forth combination of it. And it's like, well, this is the way it seems to be. This is the way of how it is. Because you're focusing on that. You're focusing about what was happening in that way, and you're thinking, well, how I can do it, how I can have my own sensitivity, because you're focusing on that. You're focusing about the way of the continuous cycle of how it was, right? And what's on the right side? The Web Weaver. Synchronicity, divine intelligence, cause and effect. Yeah, so this could be a cause and effect situation, right? So it remains of how it was because you're focusing on what was happening in that way. You're focusing on how everything is going to be in that moment, and you do exactly what you're told to do. Be responsible for your actions. Be responsible what was happening in that way because you're focusing on that. You're focusing what was happening because you're focusing on what caused and what effect of that situation. So let me read you the Enchanted Map because you want to hear my beautiful voice. So this is what it's going to be at the end of this video. I'm so sorry that this video is very long, but you're focusing on what was happening. And if all my fans are feeling sorry for me, or they could easily send a comments of what was happening. So it's like I was feeling happy, then I was feeling angry, I was feeling all, humorous, but now I'm feeling a little bit sad, So it's like you're focusing on what was going on because this reading does make sense. So it's like you're focusing on what was happening in that way, and you're thinking, well, this is not going to represent this situation, but it does, right? So this is the way it seems to be in that way, and this is what it says. Number 22 reverse, intention. So let's see. So it says for number 22 for intention reverse, it says, are you clear about your intentions, or are you in a foggy state of denial about your true motives and or ambitions? This is the time to step back and gain perspective, clarity about your direction. Check your motives and ask if they are sincere. Are you pursuing some goal blindly without asking its cost? Good intentions are being misinterpreted. Now is a time for self-evaluation and self-nurturing. You will benefit greatly if you take time out to regroup. So it means that you're focusing to rest on how you're feeling because of how this is going to be in that way, and you're focusing on what was happening in this the way of how it is, right? So if you're wondering why I'm crying, because this video is very emotional, and it might make you cry, it might make you happy, it might make you laugh, whatever it is. But I just described a whole entire emotions that I just told you about. And the individuals I'm going to tell you, between the individual who is a woman, who is a man, it'll be a Sagittarius as the woman situation, and basically the Scorpio as the man. So in these two different elements, as a water sign and a fire sign, as a zodiac sign, by the way, basically it's like that's the way it goes. You have to focus on how you're feeling, focusing on how it seems to be, focusing on what you like to do, but that's how it is in that way. So I just told you a whole entire way of how it seems to be, and you're focusing that this is the way it kind of goes. So this is how it seems to be in that way, and this is the way it seems to be. So I hope you all like this video. Please understand that this is the way it goes, and you have to understand it, but that's how it seems to be in that way, and you do exactly what you're going to be doing, and that's how it is. So I'm going to say this. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful time, and I'll see you next time. And this is the way it goes. Thank you so much. Bye for now. Really. Bye.